Hey guys, thank all of you guys for coming out. Here we are. It's the end of July. We're coming into August. Some of the dog days, tough fish and all that stuff, and
it's like the middle of July.
It's 19th. Okay, it's the second half of July. Excuse me.
God, dude.
Captain Technicality over here. Captain Ron, ladies and gentlemen, is in the house
man.
tonight.
I was like, man, I got some bills due. Got nervous.
Probably got some past due knowing you.
Boy. New phone, who this?
But here we are, and the point is that you guys are filling the room up like you always do, man, and we cannot thank all of you enough. All right, so, you know, we've been talking about doing just kind of quick electronic tips in every seminar, you know, for the last few times. We're going to continue that. And one of the things that goes on right now, is the Thermic Line. Now, we've had some cooler than normal temperatures. We all know this. We've had weird weather this year, all year long. It seems like it's been almost a year now of really strange for that time of year conditions, inconsistency, stuff like that. So the water temps have been like, a few days ago, the water temp was like 83 degrees on Lake Fork, and I was like, wait a minute, it's July 15th, and it's like 80 degrees. Like, we
had 4 days of a north wind in the middle of July.
And I'm not saying that's never happened. I don't remember seeing like 83 degree water in July on Lake Fork. I don't remember seeing that. So it's been really strange. So the Thermic Line is not as much of a deal, especially on the big lakes like Lake Fork right now, because the Thermic Line is set up so deep that it's not really relevant to the areas that you're fishing right now. But if you look in the deeper water and you look deep enough, you'll see it. Now if you go to some of the smaller lakes, which we have been fishing some other lakes in between as well on some days, if you go to some of the smaller lakes, you can find a Thermic Line sometime as shallow as 15 feet. Well, boy, that's in play this time of year. Like, that's a big deal. So we're going to kind of explain what the Thermic Line is and how to use it to your advantage, because it can help you. It can be to your advantage. It can group some fish up. We saw that this morning. It can group some fish up and condense them for you and help you catch more fish. All right, so first let's start with what a Thermic Line is. And you chime in whenever you're ready. If you've got something that I'm wrong on,
go ahead.
Feel free. So basically what a Thermic Line is...
Well, so let me explain what a Thermic... You're good. Go ahead, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
How many times do y'all think he's going to do it?
No. It's like pulling the truck up when someone's trying to get in. You know that?
I've done that to you.
Yeah,
yes, I have. Yeah. So a Thermic Line is, as we go into summer and the water heats up, the water starts to lose oxygen content. The dissolved oxygen in the water starts to get less and less and less. Well, as that happens, the oxygen kind of rises, so there becomes a layer down at the bottom of the water column that has little to almost no dissolved oxygen in it. So that'd be like, how long can you function well underwater because you don't breathe water, right? Well, for these fish, it's kind of like that. It's not quite that extreme, but how long can that fish stay down there and feed and function underneath a layer that has little to no dissolved oxygen? He can't. He can't stay down there for long periods of time. He can't live down there permanently. He doesn't feed good down there. And you will see fish go below it, but the majority of the fish will be right above it. And so as you get in the summertime, we all know the deeper the water is, the cooler it is down there further. So the ideal window is going to be tight to that Thermic Line, but not below it, because that'll be the coolest water that they can get and that has a good oxygen content. So that's what a Thermic Line is. And show you guys kind of what it's going to look like on your graph. It's going to look like haze. It's just going to look like little specks, like fog across the bottom of your 2D sonar, or it'll even show up vaguely on your downscan if you've got it tuned in right. By the way, this Wednesday, we've got an in-depth downscan and side scan for Lawrence video coming out this Wednesday. So if you guys are interested, stay tuned for that. But you'll kind of see, like, this would be a Thermic Line at about 21 feet right here, and we'll pass this around. And this is just, you know, my awesome art that I do every week, right? But it'll just be haze right here at a certain level, and it'll stay pretty level. A lot of times it'll be the same level across a big section of the lake. Now, as you travel throughout the lake, that level can change some. One of the advantages, one thing we're going to talk to you about tonight is shallow summer fishing. And Ronnie's going to talk to you about fishing shallow grass and stuff tonight. And hey guys, when that Thermic Line sets in and the more it climbs, the better that shallow water fishing gets. Because guess what doesn't happen in shallow water? No Thermic Line. No oxygen, the oxygen doesn't dissolve. That shallow water has a higher oxygen content. So that's part of that deal. Chasing squirrel a little bit there, but that's what it looks like. I've got an image on the phone that we're going to pass around as well. Don't go swiping through my pics. I don't know what you'll see. I have kids. But there's one for you guys. You can kind of see what I'm talking about. The haze on the 2D sonar on a Lowrance image right there. And so we'll kind of pass these around. If that picture starts to dim out, just tap it and it'll brighten back up, okay?
And if anybody's not familiar with a cell phone, just raise your hand. In case you guys didn't know that. And so, yeah, scuba diving. Scuba diving.
In clear water at Broken Bow, it'd be this thick of cloud of fog.
Yeah.
You can just see a fog.
Yeah, you can see the
Clear
thermal
underneath.
Interesting.
And you can definitely feel it.
30 foot.
I mean, you just, it's like walking into a
30 foot
cooler.
level is what I think.
Make
Is
you
that
gasp
more?
for air.
Yep, that's been
Yeah.
about right.
Yeah.
Out here, yeah.
Regulator, a squirt mixing through.
Yeah, out here on Lake Fork, it's been down around the 30 foot and sometimes deeper. And, you know, we're not really fishing much deeper than that, hardly ever, on Lake Fork. So it's really not affecting the fishing. But let's talk about how to use it to your advantage now. So when you see that line, let's say that you see it at 18 feet, right? And that's kind of where your thermic line level is. What you want to do now is you want to find your map, find your navionics, and you want to go to work a little bit. And you got to do a little studying here. And what you want to do is find structures that have a break, a crest, a peak, that's somewhere around that 18 foot just above it. So if you've got a hump that tops out at 15 foot, that sucker's probably going to be pretty good with an 18 foot thermic line. Or a road bed that's, 17 foot and there's an 18 foot thermic line, there's probably going to be some fish on that road bed. So you want to find as many structures as you can that are as tight to that thermic line as you can find them, but not going under it. Where the peak of the structure is above it, they have a little room to work right on that structure where they can ambush things right above that thermic line. And like I said, guys, what that can do is it can take, if the thermic line, like right now on Lake Fork, that's one of the challenges we have, is the thermic line is so deep, it's taking nothing out of play. These fish can roam down to 30 foot of water, and every piece of structure in the lake that you would ever think of fishing, it's all in play right now. But when you get that thermic line and it pushes them up to 18 feet, and they're not going to go down there, and it kind of eliminates a lot of the water for you. And so it takes all those fish that might be spread out across all these structures from 18 to 30, and now they're all 15 to 18. And that just increases your percentages of finding groups of fish on structure. So that's how you use it. You use it by finding the structures that correlate just above it and narrowing your search down. It can really take a lot of water out of play for you.
The negatives are it pushes the bait up. So the bait's going to stay above it. So you're going to drive around the lake and you're going to start to notice, man, a lot of that bait's
high.
suspended.
Real high, yeah.
And
How many of y'all have seen that lately on your electronics around here? Have y'all seen that? It's
you see
happening.
a ton of bait. At this time of year, the baits at the fullest it's going to be. Everything's at its peak size. The bass have more bait than they will all year. They're chasing. Their metabolism's high. There's a lot of suspended fish. The thermic line tends to push fish up. You start to see a lot more fish suspended in trees. A lot more fish chasing, roaming, and things get a little bit tougher this time of year. And we'll transition that here in a few minutes. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of it. Is there any questions on thermocline fishing or how to use it or anything like that?
If you ever get real curious, and this is what I told the guy today, I said this is a great way to really learn about thermocline. If you're in, let's say you're in 30 foot of water, okay, and that thermocline's down there at 20. If you will jump in and swim down there, you're gonna need to take a good breath because this 20 foot's not that deep. It's from the front to the back of the boat, but to kick down that deep, and you swim down there, you'll feel that thermocline. And when you feel that thermocline, you kind of understand why the fish and the bait don't want to be down there. It's just it's a really big temperature difference, and it's like he said, there's just nothing down there for them. It's kind of a dead space, there's a lot that happens with the thermocline. It starts to change a lot of things. It starts to make some other fish and some other areas start to really thrive. And I'll go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing I like to do in the summer, Billy likes to do this as well, is I like to fish shallow at times. Now, I know that a lot of people think that I'm married to the deep water, to the big crankbait and the big football jig, and I like it and I love it.
I told my customers this morning what was funny is I had customers today, they wanted to fish structure. They wanted to fish main lake stuff. That was something they felt was a weakness of theirs. They wanted to focus on that, learn more about that, da-da-da-da. And so what was funny is kind of I have the reputation for being the backwater, shallow water guy. Ronnie's kind of got the reputation for being the main lake structure guy. And he was back fishing shallow grass, and I was out on the main lake.
Yeah.
I think that speaks to our versatility a little bit, but it was funny.
It is, and it's what I like. I kind of like both. But what happens is when I start seeing a thermocline, well, number one, when there's a frog bite, probably going to be chasing it. But when the thermocline starts to set in, a lot of times I will I'll just kind of get away from the deep water. And it'll dissipate here as it cools down and stuff, and then things will get back to normal. But I like to get away from it a little bit. I don't abandon it. Right now, that out on Fork, that 12 to 17 foot of water is, in my opinion, the key. A lot of the big fish that we've been catching lately, and we've been catching a lot of big fish, are coming in that 12 to 17 up to 20 foot of water. And those fish, the groups that I'm finding, I'm not finding many groups of fish out here. On a good day, we might catch 6 or 7 bass out of one school, and that's a good school.
There's not just
there's
normal
the
where
mega
there's
schools.
Yeah, that's not happening.
It's just not happening. And a lot of the reason is there's a lot more lake than there usually is. There's a lot of water flow. There's a lot of things happening. They haven't got concrete. There's a whole lot more people fishing with a whole lot better electronics and a whole lot more information available. The bass can't group up. They get beat up when they group up. I mean, with side imaging, they can't. We can see them.
There's like we said, there's no Thermic Line in play to push them up. Like the whole lake's kind of in play.
There's a whole lot of things going on.
Whole lot of factors.
I start to move up. I start to fish grass. Now, I want to talk to you guys today about fishing main lake grass. And so there's a whole lot to it. So I'm gonna talk about 3 different baits. I'm gonna talk about the different ways to fish grass. You can fish on top of grass, you can fish on the bottom of the grass, and you can fish on the edge of the grass. That's kind of it. That's how you got to kind of look at it. So on top of the grass, some of the better baits are going to be your frogs, buzz bait, a chatter bait, whopper plopper, swim bait, that sort of deal. Underneath it, a jig or a punch rig is going to be kind of your best deal. And on the edge of it, yeah, it really is your only deal. And then on the edge of it, there's several different options. My favorite is going to be a jig. And so let's talk about the top of the grass. Early in the morning, a lot of times the top of the grass is going to kind of be the key. Even out on the edge of the grass. A frog this time of year, to me, is about as deadly as it can get. I'm going to start looking for the grass, because what happens this time of year is, as the oxygen depletes into the deep water, all the fish that are kind of looking for something that are in these areas, they're going to kind of move to the grass, because obviously the grass, especially hydrilla, is going to have ample amounts of oxygen. It's going to have tons of forage. It's going to have lots of life: crawfish, bluegill, threadfin, gizzards, anything you can think of is going to be in that grass.
How deep?
It depends, You're not going to see grass in East Texas deeper than, maybe 12 to 14 foot. It's just, we don't have it anymore.
Very rare. Maybe Brandy Branch sometimes gets it up to 20,
gets
but pretty
it.
rare.
The lake we don't talk about over there north of Raven on the tip gets it, but kind of that's it. But if there's grass, you fish it. It just doesn't really matter. If you see grass on that edge, you fish it.
Think about one thing that he said about how hydrilla and coontail, and hydrilla more effectively than anything else, really puts out a lot of dissolved oxygen into the water column. So we just talked about with the Thermic Line, what's happening? Less dissolved oxygen in the water. The hotter it gets, the less oxygen content's in the water, which makes more fish go tighter to grass because it's putting oxygen back into the water. Does that make sense to everybody? Like it's just like a magnet. It draws them when that goes on.
It does. And going into September, the grass gets really, really good. August, September.
Yeah, boy.
September's my favorite time to throw a frog. I mean, it's crazy. And there's 2 different types of frogs. You got your buzz frogs, your kicktail like a ribbit, horny toad, and then you got your popping frogs, your walking frogs, that sort of deal. When that water warms up in that September time frame, that ribbit and horny toad, man, it gets tough. That thing's good. But on your main lake grass, we're looking for the same thing that we're looking when we're fishing structure. In fact, when I first started fishing Lake Fork, it was full of grass. And I learned a lot of the deep water structure because of grass lines. So I'd find points in the grass, and ends up a lot of the stuff that I fished when we had grass ends up being great structure when the grass, from 2010 to 11, the same areas are good. Just 2010, it had hydrilla growing out to 18 foot. In 2011, it didn't have 18 foot of water on it because the lake was so low. And those same points and things started to be good. And I'm looking for the same thing. I'm looking for points. I'm looking for high spots. I'm looking for indentions. And then I'm using my side imaging a lot. In fact, today the fish that we found, and we found a little spot today on a lake, and we found a big patch of grass, and we side imaged it. And all I'm looking for on side imaging is I'm marking the edge of that grass. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to fish the edge of that grass. So let's say I take a 100-yard stretch of grass and I put waypoints on it. My waypoints are going to draw me a line for me to fish. I might have 100 yards with 10 waypoints, and they might specifically not just be the edge of the grass, but they might be the edge of the grass where the grass dips back in, or it comes out and makes a sheer little point. They might be where the grass kind of tapers out, and you can, if you guys spend time on your electronics, you can look on your side imaging and see the grass, and you can see where it tapers or where it's higher in the water column. And what are you doing here? You drawing some grass?
No, I'm going to here in a second. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm hoping that ain't grass. That looks more like a cheeseburger than grass. So,
Well, you want to tell them how you drowned Billy Lawson?
the way to drown Billy Lawson is roll a cheeseburger down that boat ramp. So I'll go back and I'll mark these points in the grass, and then I'll back up and I'll fish it. My two favorite ways to fish the edge of the grass are a flipping jig or a casting jig, whichever brand. I use Santone. If I'm in 2 to 8 foot of water, I might use 2 to 6 foot of water. I might use a 3/8 or a ½ ounce. If I get over that, I'm probably going to move up to a 3/4 ounce. I'm throwing either 20-pound fluoro or 65-pound braid. A lot of times when I'm in the thicker grass and I'm throwing that 3/4 ounce jig, I'm going to throw 65-pound braid.
Y'all got to go register?
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
Okay,
Good luck.
thank y'all for coming.
But if I'm in that deeper grass and I'm letting that jig fall down in the grass, I'm usually going to throw 65-pound braid. Here's the deal. People don't like to throw braid when they're in open water. And if you're fishing the edge of the grass, you might only be fishing the last few feet of it, but it's still grass. And they're not gonna notice the braid. It just doesn't happen. And I don't care how clear the water is. It's just Brandy Branch is one of our clearer lakes in East Texas, and if you don't go out there and throw braid, you're gonna get beat by some little boy out there throwing braid. A big creature bait's also a great bait.
If you watch these guys that fish at shallow grass, a lot of guy like a Hackney,
Yeah, it's
you
braid.
hear braid a lot.
It's
He's
braid.
throwing braid a lot.
And I fish all these East Texas lakes for a long time now, and I've seen some big bags get weighed in really clear water. Lake Tyler used to have a lot of grass in it, and it got real clear. And these guys started weighing these big, heavy 30-pound bags, and they were catching everything on braid. So braid's the way to go, especially around grass. But I'll throw a 3/4 ounce jig. There's another method that's pretty unique. It's called I don't know what it's called, but you get on these big grass flats, or let's say you got a lake that's got grass out, and you got a hump. Let's just take a hump for instance. You top your humps in 15 foot of water, and the grass is all but 2 foot from the top. You can take like a 1 ounce or 1 1/4 ounce jig on a flipping rod, 65-pound braid, and throw it out on that hump just like you would a football jig. Okay. Let it sink through that grass. Let it hit to the bottom. Reel down to your rod's tight and rip it up straight up to 12 o'clock and let it fall back down the grass. And it'll rip it up. It'll look like somebody just went through there with a weed eater when you get done fishing. But that's a great way to catch the bass. But I'm going to get on these grass lines. Now, there's a couple ways to fish these grass lines. If you've got a really good defined main lake point, you can back up and cast to the point just like you would fishing any offshore structure. If you've got a grass line and you're going to cover some water, the best way, in my opinion, to do it is sit your boat where if I kick my trolling motor from here to that pillow right there, then I'm in the grass. I'm in it. But if I kick back over here, I'm just barely not in it. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to make small little casts or small pitches right up and fish right down the edge of that grass. It's a parallel way to fish it. And that's a great method. And again, I like a jig. And the color on the jig just varies. Today we're fishing a little bit dirtier water, a lot of coontail grass, a little bit of hydrilla, but a lot of coontail. Coontail just doesn't tend to filter the water as good. When you're in a dirty lake and you see coontail, it tends to be real brown. And it's collecting the dirt, it's just not doing a whole lot. Hydrilla tends to get the water really clear. It stays green. That's why your Florida lakes that are full of hydrilla are so clear. It stays green, it filters the water. Man, it's the superior grass. But
Dried up.
That what?
Okeechobee's dried up.
Okeechobee's low.
Is it really? So the other way is just to punch the grass. And summertime is about as good a punching as you can get. Anywhere from, really 3 to 20 foot of water you can punch. you know, and I like to use a heavier weight. In this time of year, with the water warmer, when I'm punching, I'm usually using a crawl bait, and the reason is the flaps, they tend to get a little bit more of a reaction out of the fish just because the metabolism's higher. They're not as sluggish. In the winter, when it's colder, I use more of a beaver style bait. But when it's warmer like this, especially if I'm fishing coontail, I'll use, you know, kind of a crawl, like a smash crawl or a rage crawl or something like that. A rage lobster, it's a great bait. The same thing for my jigs. If I'm fishing the edge of the grass this time of year, usually I'm going to use some kind of a crawl bait on my jig. Now, that all being said, if I'm fishing some shallow grass and I can't get my crawl through there and I have to move to a slender, more sleek style, beaver style bait, I will. And then, you know, creek channel bends, creek channel edges, those are all key areas. And then a lot of times this time of year, you just get back into your creeks. Just finding the grass can be key. A lake like this has a lot of big creeks that run way back, and you can get into those creeks and find fish. The bait will use the creek channels. A lot of times, just the edge of the creek channel will create a great little line for you to fish, and you can just sit your boat. You know, let's say the edge of the creek channel's got grass, and you just sit your boat right there where there isn't any grass and make small casts, throw a chatterbait, something like that on the edge of it.
We're going to go over in detail different. That's what I'm doing right now. We're going to go over in detail different structures and
where
the grass scatters and.
Like a foot. I don't know nothing about feet on the grass.
What is this? This is a creek channel. This is a drain. Don't make fun of my art, Roddy. I'm trying as hard as I can over here.
So anyways, I'm trying to think, you know, there's so much to grass fishing, but there's so little really. The dog days of summer, people start to put that frog up when it's bluebird skies. Man, I actually took a picture for, and I'm not going to show it because it didn't work out, but I caught about a 5.5 pounder today on a frog at like 2 o'clock. It was bluebird. There wasn't any wind. There wasn't any, there wasn't any clouds. There wasn't any wind. And we caught several really big fish on a frog today. And it was one of them just in the middle of the day. And the grass was matted up.
Sometimes when you got that high sky and you got no wind and it's hot,
oh yeah,
that just puts them right under the edge of whatever's matted or flooded. Like it puts them tighter to that shade line and all that. And like they'll get up under there, and then there's this thing over their head is like, should a bass be an apex predator he is, he can't help it. I mean,
and the bait starts to pull up.
And it's the only way to get something that'll stay right there on his head.
The bait starts to pull up, but if you're in an area, if you're around grass, you're going to see a lot of. Usually, you're going to see a lot of activity, and that's something else. If you're around grass and you're not seeing any movement, you're not seeing any activity, you're not catching any fish, just leave. I mean, it's real simple. When you're around grass this time of year, you're going to see shad. If you're around grass and pads, which a lot of times in a lot of our lakes, if you're around grass, you're going to be around lily pads, and you're not hearing any popping, brim popping off the bottom of the pads or popping in the grass, it's probably time to leave. You know, when I'm talking grass, I'm not talking gator grass, pondweed, anything like that. I'm talking about submergent vegetation. I'm talking about your coontail, milfoil, hydrilla. Those are the only three you're probably going to see in East Texas. And Main Lake stuff. You know, if you find these grass lines on Main Lake, and Lake Fork's not a great lake unless you run up the north end of the East Arm. It's not a great lake for that, but Sam Rayburn's a great lake. Brandy Branch is a great lake.
Well, you got, you've got the backs of all the kind of the big major creeks that are on the north facing. Like you can go up on this side and find a lot of grass.
Yeah.
You can go up Birch and find a lot of grass. You can go up Little Caney and find a lot of grass. You can go
all
that stuff on the east side.
Caney's got grass, but it's so far up there. You know, it's just not.
But you do have to go to the back.
Yeah.
The back.
You got to go to the back. Some of these lakes have good main lake, like we used to have out here, like Lake Tyler used to be. Man, they kill all our grass. Parks and Wildlife.
They're still. What are y'all spraying?
Quit.
I don't know.
The hydrilla killer.
I don't know what they're spraying, but it's
So
irritating.
let's see what you got here.
Okay, I'm almost. You just keep talking.
Has anybody got any other questions for me on the grass?
Because this is a major art project.
Just one thing. When you were talking about the Thermic Line a while ago, we're talking about when it starts getting 90s, 95.
Yeah,
degrees,
so we have.
It's the temperature.
It's hard to explain the Thermic Line because let me tell you something else. That you guys ever get out early in the morning in the summer and you see that haze across the bottom of your graph? Y'all know what I'm talking about? Anybody know what I'm talking about? You pull up to your first spot and you're like, man, what is that? I can't even read the bottom. I call it an early climb. that's where that oxygen, it's just kind of a funky deal. And as the sun comes up and it gets warm, it starts to fall. So I don't know so
That's
much
the
the water
beginning of the
temperature.
thermic. So that's the one that.
That's
so,
the early climb. That's what
Yes,
I
the
call
early
it.
climb. So when the thermic line is trying to set in, you'll see it early in the morning. Then as the sun gets up, it kind of dissipates. But once the thermic line sets in, I don't know what the temperature number is. I know this: the water temps did get up to 90. They got up to the 90s, like 90, 89, 90, 91. And that's when the thermic line set in. Now, it didn't set in very deep. It was still kind of down to 25, whatever. And then the water cooled off and it pushed deeper, but it stayed set up. And it's just a deal that once in the water, I said it got around 84, 83, but it never got down in the 70s or anything like that. And typically when we see the turnover occur, so the thermic line will keep hanging around until the turnover happens. Once it sets in real good, it usually stays until the turnover happens. And when the turnover happens, it goes away because the turnover, cool water flips with warm water on the surface, or cool water on top. The water on the surface gets equal or cooler than the water on the bottom, and it flips. And that disperses the thermic line right there, immediately disperses it. And the whole lake has low oxygen content, and the lake
Fishing's great.
And fishing's amazing because fish love that, right? But like I said, now once it flips, the whole lake gets low on oxygen, the whole water column, and that's why fishing is so tough during the thermic line. Okay, and so then it's gone for the year. But once it kind of sets in, and you've got that hard thermic line, it usually doesn't go away till the lake turns over. The lake turns over. Usually, the lake needs to kind of hit the 70s. You need the water temps, the surface temps start getting in the 70s to where that surface temp is as cool or cooler than the water that's down deep. And that's what causes it to flip and make the thermic line go away.
Most
So,
of the time, October.
I've seen it as early as August with weird cool fronts in August before. I've seen it as late as October. Usually, it's sometime in September. And if you're a big bass splash fisherman, you know that sucker is prone to have some type of turnover effect on it year after year a lot of times. So that's typically when I've seen it happen. August to October is the window. It usually happens in September.
And you can tell. I mean, it's real obvious in the lake.
Yeah, when that happens, all that junk that's in that thermic line, all that haze is all mixed up and junk comes to the surface. Who knows what a bryozoan colony is? Looks like a space alien jellyfish or something. Have y'all seen those floating around?
That's the lake placentas.
Lake placenta, yeah, and those are a sign of a really healthy fishery. It's a microorganism that colonizes, and they actually attach themselves to these tree trunks out here. And when the lake turns over, they're not just like, they don't have fingers, they don't just latch onto the tree and tie a knot. So when the lake turns over, it pulls some of those off those tree trunks, and you'll see them floating around the lake like a mulch floating around. So when you start seeing a bunch of those at the end of summer, there's turnover going on. It's starting to turn. And sometimes the weather change doesn't happen real drastic, and it'll just kind of slowly happen. And maybe the north half of the lake will turn over, and then the middle will turn over, and then the south, and it can kind of drag on. That's kind of what happened year before last. We had I think it was year before last, we had a really prolonged turnover because it kind of went in stages down the
Does
lake.
it turn over in the spring?
No, because no thermic line happens in the winter. In the wintertime, the oxygen content is super equal throughout the water column. There's no thermic line, and that's really what causes the turnover is, like we said, colder is heavier than hot when it comes to water. So right now in summertime, it's hotter at the surface than it is at the bottom. So when this water up here gets equal to or colder than this water down here, then it flips. Well, in the wintertime, it's colder on the surface. The water's constantly cooling and kind of constantly mixing, so the oxygen stays constantly equal. Yep.
It's a great biology lesson on lakes.
Hey, I loved it.
That's good. That's good stuff.
So I'm going to quit drawing because I've drawn enough. I got a major art project going on here. So I wanted to kind of piggyback on what you were talking about with the shallow.